What I'm going to talk today is small change, chicken feed. And it's very funny because this morning I was having a coffee nearby, and on a small plate on the bar there were foreign small coins, bronze, nickel coins, coming from all over the world. I counted over 30 different countries. So it does mean that even small change circulate a lot. That's about the story. So from Coda's quadrants, we've seen different aspects of this quadrant, and the one I'm going to focus on is small currency, which is anonym and approximate, and it's a problem in some ways because no, where's the pointer? I don't know. The red button. Okay. So what is that anonym? To be anonym supposes that it's anonym for three different motives. The seller doesn't know the buyer doesn't know the seller, and there's no string attached to the good which is exchanged or to the money which is exchanged, right? If in any way there is a string attached, so anonymity is limited by identification. For example, you may not know personally the person you're trading with, but you can attribute social or ethnic identity to him or her, okay? So that's one way to reduce anonymity, and small coinage very often comes with such a reduction because they tended in the past years, in the past centuries, to be used by specific categories of person. Second question is proximate. Is that true that small currency is proximate? Yes, in the exchange. You exchange small currency only in proximate transactions, but this small change may come from very far place. Think about cowries, for example, which were used as small currency and were coming from very far places. It's the same for bronze coins, as I experienced this morning in this cafe in Paris. So it's still very provisional. I intended to work on the whole last decade of the 19th century problems with small currency, but it's complex and there are a lot of sources. I still have to sort out some of my material. So the issue here is that there was at the time an international monetary agreement which was called the Latin Monetary Union. And the Latin Monetary Union, to make it short, it's something that was designed to fight the increasing value of silver. And in a few years' time, the situation reversed, and the LMU found itself doing exactly the contrary. That is, how to maintain a silver or partly silver-based currency system while the silver value was decreasing on international markets. Okay, so if you read the debates and the treaties of the LMU, Latin Monetary Union, until the First World War, the main issue was actually not the bimetallist question, which was, I would not say settled, but which was a kind of symbolic issue after 1873, but it was rather the question of small currency. A small currency was key because they were made in the treaty in silver. The problem is the small currency in the Latin Monetary Union Treaty is not all the small currency that was circulating at the time. In fact, it's only part of it. There were two other categories of small currencies that were not addressed in the Latin Monetary Union system. That is bronze and copper coins, and later on nickel coins, and small banknotes. Those were not addressed by the treaty. So sometimes the treaty had to refer to that in order to settle things right. For example, in 1878, when the question of the redeeming of the Italian banknotes, small banknotes, was addressed by the conference. But that is a major reason why the LMU didn't work that well. because they were controlling, they were giving rules to how to issue subsidiary silver currencies, but they did not do the same for bronze coins, copper coins, small banknotes. Okay, and there is no discussion on a global understanding of what small change is, and that's one major reason why the systems keep failing. So no distinction between the different categories of small denomination currency. The mobility of small coins was largely underestimated. It was not imagined that small coins could flow from one country to the other, and not only subsidiaries. For subsidiaries, they knew it because that was one of the reasons the Latin Monetary Union was set in the first place. But subsidiaries were made in silver. But people imagined that token monies, the other category of small change, would not be considered by this problem, when actually they were. The idea was the main international coin was gold coin. In fact, all coins are potentially international. Another reason why they did not take it into account that it's because in percentage of value, bronze coins, copper coins were only a small part of the issuance. Something like 0.1% of coin issued were that kind of small currency. But those were very rapidly, highly circulating currency, playing a huge role in retail shop, that is, in the social exchanges of ordinary people. And the last thing is it's clearly a form of social prejudice against poor's money, okay? Because it's social prejudice against poor's people, you know. So it led to a form of benign neglect about this question. What they should have done is to understand all the factors that have an impact on the circulation of subsidiaries, that is silver, small silver change. For example, a larger token circulation, everything being equal, will have had a negative impact on the silver subsidiary circulation, because there were partly some substitution, possible substitution between copper and silver. A higher revenue per capita called for a higher amount of money through two different processes: increased monetarization of the economy, which was still significant at the time because, contrary to today, monetarization was still on the rise in Europe, and higher revenue per capita also meant that the level of transactions was higher, so it meant they needed more cash. Higher domestic prices might have a negative impact on low denomination currencies, because higher prices meant that the lowest denomination were not as useful, as we see today with some people asking in Germany or in the United States that we stop minting and circulating 1 cent coins because they are too small. Small note circulation may have also a negative impact on the subsidiaries circulation. That was very clear in Italy during the Corsa Forazza, the Cours Forcé. The silver coins from Italy disappeared, vanished from Italy, and migrated toward the rest of the Latin Union. And later on, it was the same for the bronze coins from Italy that fled Italy and went to France and Switzerland. Higher monetization, I talked about that, and a higher use of book credit, of course. If you can go to your local shopkeeper and pay on book credit rather than pay with cash, you may need less small subsidiaries. Those questions were never envisioned in the Latin monetary negotiations, not once. Here you have official silvers on small silver. It's a table from the book from Einaudi, and as you see, he took the official figures for France, and so for paper money, fewer than francs, than 5 francs, that is a 5 franc banknote actually, you've got 0% here and 0% here. So that's completely honest, not really. That's the 5 franc banknote circulation in France. as you notice, when the monetary crisis hit Europe in 1872, the 5 francs banknote circulation increased dramatically in France because there were a shortage of silver subsidiaries to a peak of 140 million francs, which was a huge sum at the time. And then it decreased very quickly when the crisis was over and the bank redeemed those 5 franc coins. It's interesting to see that, indeed, if you take those 2 dates, there is no small denomination banknotes in France, but there actually, in the meantime, exactly in the meantime, there were a lot. Okay, so beware of the time spans. The whole story is very known. Here in yellow, you've got the gold coins minting, which was the bulk of the coins minting in France during the period. Here in black, you've got the 5 francs, that is silver standard minting, which went up only when the gold to silver ratio was sufficiently high. Okay. Because then it was profitable to mint silver. But of course, when the ratio went up after 1872, it meant that the country would have been overflowed with silver minting. So the only solution was to stop silver minting by law, which was done in 1873, in September 1873. So afterwards, you see, you have no more 5 francs minting. And so the only silver minting afterwards was subsidiaries. Okay, so it's quite clear there's a relationship between the mint ratio and silver and gold minting. And if you look at the detailed gold to silver ratio on the London market, it's I'm sorry. These are not very significant. What is important is a ratio here, and you clearly see that it started to evolve from 1871. So we always have this date of 1873, but when you look at very detailed data, that is weekly data, you discover that actually the silver price started to wither in the late 1871, and from that period on, it was clear that silver was doomed to price lowering. So what about the miners and subsidiaries minting? So miners are mainly bronze coins minted along the 1852 legal system. You see there are 2 different scales, one for silver subsidiaries, banknotes, silver subsidiaries and silver 5 franc coins, and the other one for miners, bronze coins. As you see, the amounts are 1 order of magnitude smaller for miners than subsidiaries. But remember that the average value of the bronze coin was 1/10 also of that of the subsidiaries, which meant that in number of coins, it was about equivalent, okay? The same order. So it's very important not to confuse the value minted and the number of coins, which are more significant in terms of use. And as you can see, the minting of subsidiaries until 1893, 94 actually, was almost flat. Okay, no variations from year to year. It was a set quota, so it was not adapting to demand. There was not something like a money demand on whatever kind. It was only international agreement plus the bureaucratic management of the quota allocated to France in order to mint subsidiaries. It started to change after 1895, when you have up and downs and the Commission really asking itself whether there's a want of subsidiary or token coins in France. That's in some ways, after 1895, 1896, there's a renationalization of small coin minting. That's the part I still have to work on. Okay. So until then, it's really the period of the Benin neglect. And after that, it's a period where there's a more active way to manage small change currencies in France. Here it's not very visible. It's the disposition of the treaties and conventions of the Latin Monetary Union with all the quotas allocated to each country. The interesting thing, of course, is the two withdrawals, that of 1878 and that of 1893 for the Italian coins. This one was easily done, okay? This one was more problematic because what was covered by the treaty was the silver subsidiaries, but not the miners. While at this time, the problem was both the subsidiaries and the miners. So what were the treaties of 1878? Well, it says that the Italian government, having decided its willingness to suppress its fractional paper currency of denomination less than 5 francs, that is the equivalent of subsidiaries, the other contracting states, in order to facilitate the operation for it, engaged themselves to retire from circulation and cease to receive in their public treasuries the subsidiary Italian coins. So it was clearly written in the convention, in the treaty, that there was something like a direct relationship between the circulation of small banknotes in Italy and the fact that all these small silver coins from Italy fled to the other countries of the Latin Monetary Union, which meant there were almost no silver left in Italy, and most of it was concentrated in Switzerland and in France. So it was clear in 1878 what kind of mechanism could play there. Nevertheless, it started again in 1893. A second question is about what I propose on the idea of a link between the wealth of a country and the small coin circulation. And here I try to make a comparison. As you see, there's quite a clear relationship for Belgium, France, and Greece. That is, the richer the country, the less small circulation it has per capita, right? The exception is Switzerland. The problem is that most of this small coin circulation in Switzerland is actually Italian coins. Okay, so it's not that big an exception. All these problems led to recurrent issues with small coins, small change in many cities of France, and the problems were mainly concentrated in southern France, either because of the coming of Italian and Greek coins in the southeastern part, or Spanish and Argentinian coins in the western part of France. Okay, so we have problems in the south of France, and that was recurring. That is something like every 2 years or 3 years, you have merchant petitions, letters from the chambers of commerce, articles in newspapers saying that there's an abundance of foreign coins and that is disrupting commerce. For example, that's the petition of the merchants of Nice, the 10th of May 1873, just after the European monetary crisis. One indulges in Nice today in a great trafficking in Italian shillings, soldies. The Piedmontese merchants who import to Nice poultry, meat, and other victuals also import quantities of shilling. Some have even seen full kegs brewed by merchants, but then it's not clear. All those still Italian merchants by merchants from Nice. What does it mean? We take them with a loss of 2% for the changer. So here you see you can accuse those bad Piedmontese merchants. They are foreigners, and so they bring with them bad meat, bad poultry, and bad coins. Okay, but what does that mean, merchants from Nice? Except that they are drawing a profit from importing to France small coins. Yeah, how do they make that profit? And that's an answer of the Chamber of Commerce of Nice to a circular letter, which is an inquiry about small coin circulation in France in 1884. One may object that the shopkeeper has the right to refuse this money because, well, they say that there's a lot of foreign Italian coins and Greek Italian coins in Nice. But in the practice of commerce, the seller is almost always forced to accept these Italian shillings because they are generally accepted and often the debtor has no other money. So here the merchants from Nice import the token money, the copper coin from Italy, and here those same merchants from Nice, they are forced to accept these Italian shillings. Okay, what the idea? If they can make a small profit by importing Italian shillings, but then they have a loss of money because they have to accept it in their shops. There's something to understand here. That's a newspaper, Le Petit Niçois, 1893, so just 9 years later. And so in Petit Niçois in 1893, 1894, there are a lot of articles about the problem of small change. And here they give that news that there's a project of law which is to be discussed at the parliament and that should be submitted the next day. And so that's the article. By exception of the Article 2 of the Decree of 11 May 1807, the bullion coins of 5 and 10 centimes portraying Victor Emmanuel II and Humbert I, that is, the Italian kings, will be exceptionally received by the public cashers until the 31st of January 1894 for the change of 5 francs coin. What does that mean? That means that if the public cashers accept those small Italian coins, they will be withdrawn from the circulation very quickly. That's all that it's meant. And it's interesting to see the moment. It's just after the end of the negotiation within the Latin Monetary Union that took place until November 1893. But it's before that convention was signed into a treaty by those same countries. So it means that the convention between the country of the Latin Monetary Union addressed the question of the subsidiaries and the withdrawal of the Italian banknotes, but not the problem of the copper and bronze coins, while on a national basis, within that context of monetary negotiation of the Latin Monetary Union, the French state decided to address the question of small coins, small bronze coins. But this law was never passed. It was never put into a real legal text. So the question remained, and the question ended up with a major problem. An example of that is a widespread problem is the Chamber of Commerce of Sète, which is a city nearby Montpellier, important harbor. For some time, our city has been invaded by foreign shillings, notably from the Republic of Argentina and French and Indochina. Besides, the public cashers refuse your European foreign shillings, such as the Italian and Greek shillings. Just here, you've got 4 different national bronze coins circulating. And sometimes you heard people say at that time that only gold coins circulate. Well, it's not the case. And so all that ended up quite in riots in several cities. Bernard Trémont has written about the problems in Bordeaux, another harbor city. But the most spectacular one, completely forgotten by the historiography, were in Marseille, where a crowd of about 3,000 people marched up and down the city to protest the end of the use of Greek and Italian coins. And of course, those were poor people attracted by sea jobs. And these people were furious because a large part of their wages were paid with bronze coins, and they were left with this tax of bronze coins they could not use to buy bread anymore. So it's conclusions of a legal affair, because one of the changers of Marseille was attacked by the crowd, by the mob, and his shop was sacked. It's called the Affaire Rosa. The name of the changer was Rosa, and he was Jewish, but I have no evidence that anti-Semitism played a role. I don't know. It's a time where there's a rise of xenophobic problems in France, especially violent strife between French and Italian workers. There was a famous massacre of Aigues-Mortes in 1893, but I have no evidence that in this case anti-Semitism played a role. Okay. So a riot, destructions. The city of Marseille refused to pay Rosa for the sacking of his shop, and so there was a trial, and with the trial came a lot of evidence, interesting evidence. So what are the conclusions? First, well, the failure to discriminate among small monies in the diplomat circles into the specialists of the money issue at the time. A second issue, which appeared clearly, is the fetishism of intrinsic value. One of the reasons why miners were not considered is that they were not really considered as money. Okay? Money had to bear intrinsic value. Until that time, you still have some testimonies of people saying that banknotes are not money. They are representative money, okay? Or even fake money. For example, Czernucki, which was an important economist at the time, kept writing that banknotes were false money. Czernucki. Yeah. And a very large dose of social prejudice. That is, those small coins were used by poor people to buy their everyday shopping, and so they were not well considered by the richer people who would use gold coins or silver coins. And that explains the Benin neglect and the outright contempt with which token money was considered. This way paved the way for permanent difficulties, nonetheless within France, but also within the Latin Monetary Union, and notwithstanding a free rider issues that is not addressed here, but that should be important actually, and led to riots. It also sheds light on the mechanisms governing poor's money. Here are some few conclusions. Poor's money, if not provided from above, that is by the state, for example, by an authority, is found through exchange and convention, even though it may come from very far places. Okay? You always find, in a monetary economy, you always find small change. Okay? If it's not provided for by the state, you create something else. That's what showed the case of Argentina yesterday. Second, poor's money, basically conventional money. That is a characteristic of this kind of money. They don't care for intrinsic value. Okay, poor's money circulate as far as profit entails. So actually, it's not approximate money. If there's need for those small coins anywhere in the world, you're going to find a way to export that coins to this place. Okay, so it's proximate only in one way, that is on the spot exchange of the everyday transaction. But the money itself may come from very far away places. Poor's money means zero prices and lower wages. That's where the profit comes from. Why did the shopkeepers and the merchants imported money? Because they could buy that money at a discount, which meant that they will get 10 francs, say, that is a week's wage, for less than 10 francs. So they pay 10 francs with those bronze coins to the workers, which cost them less than 10 francs. And on the other hand, the workers, when they buy things in shops, they will pay more. And there are many ways to pay more. As we said yesterday, you don't need an exchange rate. The only thing you have to do is put a little less things for the same amount of money. Okay? So it's not the quantity of money that changes, it's the quantity of stuff. Okay? And if that's the way to do it, you make a profit both ways. But a subordinated money is still a money that's better than no money, and that's why poor's money is called for by the poor people. And it makes apparent the real nature of money, which is diverse and layered along social lines. Okay, thank you very much.